I'm Debra Lee Baldwin, author of 3 books about succulents and using them in landscapes, garden beds, containers, and projects. I'm going to be sharing with you favorite succulent landscapes I've been able to see and enjoy, and what not to do's. So as we go through, I want you to be looking at the images and thinking to yourself, is that a what not to do? Am I guilty of that? And I'll also show you how to overcome mistakes. What do you think? Is it a what not to do, or is it just simply a beautiful succulent garden? I like the way this looks. A lot of agaves. Now, agaves get big, but these actually are more in the mid-range. But what makes me nervous about this is that they're tightly packed. I wouldn't do this in my own garden. The plants are going to have to be thinned out, and that's too much maintenance that I'd want to take on. This one, everything is wrong. The plants look underwatered and stressed and probably should just be pulled out and replaced, except for that blue glow agave right in the middle. Against the house, very bad place to put huge plants. There are weeds. They used a bark top dressing that managed to turn black over time. Now, I'm not sure what kind of wood that is, but it just looks like charcoal, like maybe they dumped their fire pit on their front yard. Let's talk about what to do that would fix this, or perhaps should have been done in the first place. This is a garden by Steve McDermott for Chris and John Gleason, and you can see that there's a lot of golden top dressing and fist-sized rebel rock. There's also a beautiful agave blue glow, just like in the other garden. 50% of this is hardscape or rock, and I think 50-50 is about right, especially for a new garden. Here you can see that same garden a year later, slightly different perspective. The agave looks much the same. Some of the other plants have filled in. The top dressing is less noticeable because the plants have gotten larger. There was plenty of room left for them to grow. Laura Eubanks, known for her use of lava rock and colorful swaths of rock. You can see that she has mounded the soil and created rivulets of different colored rocks and positioned echeverias and other jewel box-like succulents. This is back in 2013 when Laura was just starting out doing landscapes. On my own channel, this video has gotten 360,000 views. Laura created her own YouTube channel in 2015, and it now has over 1,000 videos. This is Jeff Moore's own garden in Solana Beach. Jeff Moore owns Solana Succulents, and he has an amazing eye for design and understands the plants and how big they'll get. That's so important when you're designing a garden. And he also does a great job of combining textures and colors. Use your imagination and picture this vignette without those barrel cacti. Well, it still looks nice, but don't you see how the eye goes right to those sculptural spherical forms? Plus, they offer great texture. On the right, Aloe algonica blooms on the far left of Aloe cameronii. And then we also have some red in the stems of Portulacaria afra variegata at upper left. And all of that contrasts beautifully with the blue of the senecio that flows around and through this composition. The primary colors of yellow, red, and blue look good together, and succulents offer those colors. So use them and play with them. At Waterwise Botanicals Nursery in North San Diego County. All 3 of these are indigenous to the desert Southwest, and they get along fine in our gardens, whether you live in Phoenix or San Diego. If you want an aesthetically pleasing garden that's almost no maintenance, almost no water, these plants will work for you. In the background, that's Dazzlerian wheeleri. It's a thin-leaved succulent. The water storing aspect of the succulent is the core of the plant. And succulents, by definition, are plants that store water to get through periods of drought. In the center, the purpley pink paddle cactus, that's Opuntia Santa Rita, needs a lot of sun to turn that color. So it's all about what you like, what you want. If you want the creative joy of fussing with a garden, which a lot of us absolutely love doing, then they're not for you. And after all, aesthetics is a very personal and subjective aspect of any landscape. To know what you're doing when you plant a barrel cactus. This one was planted on a slope in very coarse sandy soil and not very well anchored. So that's why it fell over. The bigger it got, the fuller of moisture and the heavier, and eventually it just toppled. So that is a what not to do, to plant your barrels too steep and too shallow. Okay, what do you think about this garden? Those of you who don't particularly like it may say it's a what not to do, but when I showed this to my editor at Sunset Magazine, she was over the moon about it. It made it into the magazine and also reprinted in books on landscaping. It is a fresh look. It's minimal. It covers space in an efficient way. So you have that checkerboard look with the paving stones, the golden gravel, plus an aloe tree off to the left, breaking the whole thing up. There is drip irrigation underneath the barrel cacti. It's only used during the hottest and driest part of the year. Yep, what not to do. These are century plants. Agave americana, the agave that America is famous for. They get huge, as big as Volkswagens. They pup prolifically, meaning they send up new little plants from their roots. They have sharp tips and are just in a dead wrong place here. This is also right next to a curb. So I would get those out of there before they get any bigger and do it carefully. I have videos on how to remove century plants because it's a big question. So let's move on to a what to do. I'll be showing you several images from one of my favorite gardens in Rancho Santa Fe. The homeowner, Hannah Jarson, is continually revamping and redoing areas of her large garden. Hannah is an aloe collector. I have a video about her garden. Aloe Eden, over on the left, aloe ferox. Negative space leads your eye into the distance. But what I want you to notice here is those century plants. That's where you plant these beasts, where they can get as big as they want, and from a distance really show up. If you said what not to do, you'd be absolutely right. Agave americana, that has been taken down by the agave snout weevil. Now, the agave snout weevil started in Mexico. Flightless beetle. It's moved all throughout all of our residential areas. It has managed now to fly over the Atlantic, probably in somebody's suitcase, attached to an agave pup. I have the most comprehensive page on snout weevil on my website. Everything you need to know to control this pest and keep it from ruining your agaves. Is this a what not to do, or is this a lovely garden? Well, it's both. I like how they planted the agaves there. They've got plenty of room to pup and grow and take over. They're fine. They're a beautiful plant. But what about that dry creek bed? Yards and yards of rounded river rock dumped in serpentine path. A dry creek bed, right? Wrong! By definition, creeks are below ground, and the deeper you dig, the better and the more credible dry creek bed's going to look. One in Hannah Jarson's garden was dug just right and takes up a lot of space that needs no irrigation. It also funnels rainwater into the garden, and it serves as a walkable pathway from front yard to back. Plants have been arranged along the banks of this dry creek bed. The melaleuca trees, the paperbark trees, were laced out so they don't block the distant view. My apologies if this is your yard. So they started out here with the pseudo lawn strip along the curb. It's a great landing place for passengers exiting cars. It worked out so well for them that they decided to pave a big empty area on the slope. If they want that to look like a lawn, sorry, it's not working. It begs the question, what the heck is that? A garden ideally is a reflection of the owner. What is important and what delights them when they look out their windows or go into their gardens. Jim Bishop's hillside overlooking Mission Valley, past president of the San Diego Horticultural Society. Jim is a plantsman. He loves color. He's hands-on, rearranging and replanting and editing and thinning out and doing amazing mosaics. I don't know where he gets the strength and energy. You might want to do something like Hannah Jarson did. She just covered this slope with good old jade, not just plain Crassula ovata, the green jade, but golden jade. And so you get that wonderful yellow golden color from the shrubs year round. And next to it, and midwinter in bloom, is an aloe ferox. Oh, and very cool, very effective visually. The yellow in the leaves of the jade are repeated in the variegation of the Agave Weberi Arizona Star at upper left. I live on a steep slope, so everything is sort of terraced. I have two colors of ice plant. That's Lampranthus lemon, the yellow, that blooms on and off all year, and the deeper purple, just a seasonal bloomer in the spring. I think realistically, what most of you want to do is not necessarily a solely succulent garden, not strictly succulents, because you already have existing gardens that have some nice areas to them. And you want to blend your succulents with that. You want companion plants that are low water and low maintenance, but look really good with the succulents and vice versa. In Palos Verdes, Nancy Zinner, her slope, semi-shaded by pepper trees. The combination is one that I hadn't seen before and really like. Succulents, Senecio talanoides, and Senecio mandrilice flow through the composition, adding soft mounds and creating an overall quilt-like look are Westringia and dwarf variegated phormiums, purple loropetalum, and golden breath of heaven. This is the garden of Mark and Marcia Rafter. They've incorporated their artwork. Their whole landscape and garden is an outdoor gallery of Mark's dragonflies and Marcia's mosaics. That agave in the foreground is Agave guingola creme brulee. The tail of the dragonfly is Dazzlerian longissimum, and they had help from Steve McDearman in the design. Jim Gardner, a retired physician and potter in Palos Verdes, has an artist's eye a ground cover Sedum anglicum, which really makes the plant stand out. Mangaves share many of the cultivation requirements of agaves. Mangaves are characterized by, a little bit of freckling on their leaves. There's so many hybrids, and they're really gaining popularity and interest as showpiece plants. Jim planted them back far enough from a pathway that they're not going to be a problem. Behind the mangaves, Agave ovatifolia, or whale's tongue agave. When it's little, it just looks like Agave americana, which I think makes it a hard sell in nurseries. Also Agave lophantha quadricolor and the non-variegated Agave lophantha over on the left, and Aloe van Valeni where the path curves. I grow a dozen or more different kinds of Mangave, and what I've found, they're trouble-free, except their leaves are so brittle if you accidentally step on it or you're not very careful when you're planting it. I'm still learning about them, and I found that mine do not die after blooming, but rather create a whole bunch of new little plants where the bloom spike came out. I have containers to show you, and I think they count every much as a garden as anything growing in the ground, and succulents certainly lend themselves well to container cultivation. Now, this is a shelf display in the garden of Nancy Zingrave in Orange County, and I just did a video of my visit to her garden. It's the hacienda-themed garden. These containers also have a Mexican or south of the border or hacienda look. A lot of them are Talavera or terracotta. So that's in keeping with the theme of her garden. And I think it's important to have a theme for your garden. This is my own garden. I wanted to use dainty sedivarias and other pretty crosses of graptopetalums and graptivarias. There's so many colorful hybrids. They tend to get squashed or smothered in a garden bed, unless, of course, you've surrounded them with a lot of rock. I wanted to plant Echeveria Sahara, the blue one on the left, to make the pretty little ones stand out and work with the composition. I put them in a glazed ceramic pot. It worked out great because they cascade, and there's also some Athona capensis trailing down from that pot. So putting a pot and planting it in your garden is certainly an option. And you can see here that Jeannie Meadow did exactly that in her garden in Fallbrook. Pedestal pot has colorful succulents like a big bouquet, and over on the right is Graptivaria opalina. So you're basically planting your plants above the rim of the pot. The soil forms a dome that is roughly the same in height as the depth of the bowl. And then you plant in that and you get that lush and elevated and rounded look. Here we have it in the garden, just sitting on top dressing near a pathway that leads to the entryway to Jeannie's house. This is one of my Everything Right gardens, designed by Michael Buckner for Tina Back in Kensington, a neighborhood of San Diego. And your eye goes straight down the pathway to two large empty pots. They helped to blend house with garden, because after all, pots are an element of the garden. They're also eye-catching and work really well with the red steps and the yellow house. So here we have primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, which are repeated throughout the garden. This is a mounded garden. It uses a whole lot of rock, different kinds of rock, and includes a rock with a shallow basin for dogs that pass by, because Kensington is very much a walkable neighborhood and a lot of people come by with their dogs. This is owned by Pat Armanino, who lives in the Bay Area. Pat uses a wheelchair. She can wheel right into this deck, and everywhere she turns, she can reach her container gardens of succulents. Now, these are not on shelves. They're in high, medium, and low pots. Some are stacked. Everything is accessible, and it's colorful and creative. What a great idea. What were they thinking? Control weeds? The whole idea of lining up those circles, green bender board, outlines everything, calls a lot of attention to itself. This is a good example of barrel cacti not looking good. A more natural composition would have been more to my taste. Hey, they've created a view from their home. Maybe that's what they wanted. Jeremy Spath's garden in north of Scandito. Jeremy owns Hidden Agave Nursery in his own backyard. He's a landscape designer and an agave hybridizer, formerly with San Diego Botanic Garden. And this showcases his agave collection, and it's a test garden for new specimens. He likes contrasting the texture of soft-leaved plants that are drought-tolerant with the more thug-like agaves. What I believe is Santolina there on the right. What he has that flows throughout the entire garden is a yellow flowering shrub, stays low, called Thymophylla. His is the only garden I've ever seen it in. Pathways are important to leading the eye to focal points. And here we have Pam and Tim Jara's garden, which has 7 outdoor rooms, was on the tour that the Hort Society hosted earlier this year in the spring. And I was all over it like a flea on a hound because it was just such a stunning garden. Everything so well thought out. In this garden by Randy Laurie for clients in Hillcrest, a gravel pathway leads through the garden. I like a meandering pathway. It's more natural than a straight pathway. You know what I love about gravel? Nobody can sneak up on you. It crunches underfoot. And in terms of plants, we're looking at Agave desmetiana in bloom. Echoing the yellow variegation of that agave is the Palo Verde at left in bloom, and bromeliads. Homeowners Diane Lubke and her husband have gone for a very simple, clean-lined, easy care, rock and large specimen landscape. They work with garden designer and landscape contractor Steve McDearman. He's very much into rocks, as all the good landscapers are. Very simple, nearly no water, and the pathway leads your eyes straight to Aloe Hercules. I have very little left to show you, but I figure you were desperate for more what not to do's. An aeonium shrub that's how it looks in September on the left. It looks like it's dead. Fortunately, they have not yanked it out because come winter, early spring, it's going to look like it does on the right. Aeoniums go dormant in the summer in the hot weather, and they stop growing, and their lower leaves shrivel and fall off, and the whole plant looks sad. When the winter rains come, they come to life, and they're stunning again. And they stay stunning until the heat and drought hits again. In my own garden, I didn't water this paddle cactus. I really thought it would get by on no water all summer long. In September, after it had no irrigation for 6 months, no rain, nothing, the weight of the upper paddles caused a paddle in the middle to keel over. It just bent. And if you look closely, you can see how shriveled the pads are because they have lived off the moisture in those fleshy stems. But when I watered it, I deep soaked it. The hydraulic pressure in the plant system made that stand upright again, which was very cool. I wish I could have had a time lapse of it. And then finally we come to my least favorite plant on the planet, Eve's Needle. It's a kind of cholla, Astrocoelentropuntia subulata, and here it's planted in the dead wrong place next to a mailbox. Cholla breaks off easily, and it's called horse crippler, and there's many kinds of cholla, but this, in my opinion, is the worst because it's prolific and it eats real estate, and once you have it, you'll have it forever, and trying to remove it is hellish. Do not plant Eve's Needle. I welcome your emails. I'm delighted to hear from people who have a question that isn't answered on my website. I have an extensive website. If you do have a question about succulents, go there, type what you're looking for in the search bar. Chances are you'll find it covered in detail. I'm a journalist. I keep my website fat and sassy. I'm forever finding wonderful things to add to it. Do subscribe to my newsletter if you'd like to know what has me excited and what I've discovered. I hope you found this video helpful and entertaining. My goal is to inspire you to enjoy using succulents in fun and creative ways in your own garden and outdoor living spaces. Please know I appreciate your comments, and do subscribe and hit the like button. I'm Debra Lee Baldwin. Thank you for joining me.